bookish friends. I'm going to film the first clip for my September wrap-up. In addition to my usual yearly reading challenges I'm participating in, I'm also doing Charlene at Coffee and a Book's fall scavenger hunt, and Krista at Books and Jans and Sarah at Sarah's Nightstand, their series September. So I'll try to remember what books I read for those. I meant to film this yesterday. I even dressed up and everything, but I was just too busy. And we're getting our first taste of fall, and then we're going to get at least another week of summer. So I'm going to enjoy it while I can. I'm going to do my ebook before I forget. I read The Sweet Life by Suzanne Woods Fisher. This is the first book in a series, probably something about Cape Cod or the Creamery. Oh, that's my Instant Pot with my bone broth for our stew later. Alright, so The Sweet Life, Suzanne Woods Fisher. It's the first book. Marnie decides to buy this dilapidated building on Main Street in a Cape Cod town. I think it's Chatham. And her daughter, Dawn, is horrified. Actually, they were on Dawn's honeymoon that was groomless because her fiance broke up with her, and she decides to take her mom and enjoy a week of vacation. And then Marnie buys this ice cream shop, and Dawn decides to stay for the summer, very out of character for her, and help Marnie get the building fixed up. And Dawn actually enjoys making ice cream, and so it's a great book, women's fiction, teeny bit of romance, just how I like it. And yeah, I'm going to pick up the next book in the series eventually. And then I read, well, first I finished Death in the Air by Agatha Christie. This is a Poirot. A murder happens on an airplane, and Poirot is one of the passengers. And I counted this for the fall scavenger hunt. School supply. I know at least a fountain pen and notebook and stuff are mentioned in the inventory of what the passengers have in their pockets and in their luggage. And I don't think I figured out who done it. I actually really enjoyed this one. It didn't have Hastings as the narrator, so that's probably why. And there wasn't quite as much focus on Poirot. There was focus on two of the other characters. So yeah, I can add this to my collection. And next, I finished Clock Tower Bound by Shatona Havig from my TBR game. This was my reread pick. I'm probably not going to put this card back in for October. I'll probably wait till November. This follows Suzanne. She prefers Anne with an E, as she thinks that her best friend sabotages her. So she opens up her own bookstore next door, and it's not doing well because Bern, Indiana, is a small town.
Mommy.
My 3-year-old's over there. Bern is a small town, and it can't support 2 bookstores. It's also a very rural area of Indiana. I've actually been there. I drove by the clock tower on my way to the Gene Stratton Porter house, and I also got to go to Limberlost and do the Lob Lolly Marsh walk. If I remember and can find my pictures from there, I didn't take very many. I might pop a few in at the end of this clip. Anyway, she asks Milton, the bookstore doctor, to come help her, and Milton decides to go because he really wants to help Anne and Nadia, her friend, reconcile and to get the bookstores merged or get it down to one bookstore. And I really enjoyed it, that the focus was on the friendship between Anne and Nadia and their friend Gage. And it had cozy autumn vibes. I really like this because Anne's birthday's in October and my birthday's in October, and it was just a lovely read, but also still managed to cover some heavy topics about reconciliation and restoration of friendship, and how I can't remember how an ongoing discord between friends can affect their business and impact the town. And yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed it. The chapter titles, the ones from Anne's perspective, all have an Anne-spiration, usually related to Lucy Maud Montgomery's writings. All of Milton's chapters have a bookish kind of list going. Gage's have Aunt Debbie's wisdom. This one's friendship begins in your heart and overflows into others. And Nadia's were quotes from Jean Stratton Porter books. So yeah, I just really had a fun time rereading it. And then finally, I talked about this one in my August wrap-up a little bit, but I did just finish it yesterday. This is Safe Passage by Ida Cook. It's autobiography of Ida and Louise. It starts with their love of opera and how they got started on that, and how they were able to, sorry, one of my kids is coughing, how they were able to use that to help get Jews out of Germany and Poland in, I can't remember if they started in 1937 or 1938, all the way up to, I think, 2 weeks before war was officially declared. And then a little bit of their time during the war, and a little bit after. They do get to meet some of their refugees after the war's over. And this story really impacted me because it is nonfiction, and just reading some of these stories about what the Nazis were doing to the Jews, and how even after the war there were people who were in Germany who had immigrated from other countries. They didn't want to leave Germany, because even with being treated so poorly, because they did not want to go back to countries that were then under Russian communist regime. And just a little bit of restoration in faith and humanity, and the people who did help, who did make a difference. I really love this book. Please. I know it's World War II, but this is nonfiction. And if you want a slightly different perspective, yeah, the opera stuff didn't really mean much to me, but I still found this book very moving. Yeah, looks good. And finally, I'm going to just talk briefly about, I forgot to say what I counted my books for. So, for the fall scavenger hunt, Clock Tower Bound, I counted for a cozy piece of fall clothing, because Anne talks about her outfit for her birthday party, and it has this autumn sweater in it. And like I said, Death in the Air I counted for a school item, because it has a fountain pen. And then I did pick up a fall themed bookmark at the library I went to, if you watch my travel vlog. And I've made both cookies and bread from scratch, because I make sourdough bread, so I bake bread 4 or 5 days a week. So that's what I've done so far. I will give you a sneak peek. I did cross off a baked good too, because Shepherd's... Yeah, you erased it. Alright, do another picture. Shepherd's Lie is...
I just traced it.
Yeah. Shepherd's Lie is the Scotch Bakehouse Mysteries series, and of course they're always baking stuff, especially scones. They're very popular, and it also mentions muffins. I'll talk more about that one probably again in my next clip. So yeah, I'm gonna insert some footage of our hike yesterday, and if I can find pictures from when we went to the Limberlost, I'll do those too. Okay, a few of my kids aren't here, so I'm going to record real quick. I have finished 3 books. I'll start with my ebook. I finished Love Overboard by Shannon Sue Dunlap, I believe. And I don't normally go for rom-coms, but Shatona was talking about this book, and it has these 4 old ladies who live on a cruise ship full time, and they're called the Shippers because they like to matchmake. And it was so fun. It was so fun. Their shenanigans. The hero and the heroine, they had known each other before, so no insta love, which I always appreciate. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. How many times can I say fun? There was also a little bit of a mystery that they were trying to solve, and I really liked that too. And let's see, I don't think that counted for anything in here. No. Okay. And then I finished Shepherd's Lie, book 6 in the Scotch Bakehouse Mysteries. This I had pulled for set in the current season. I am actually going to put this card back into my TBR game. I'm actually making some additional cards, so if you have prompt ideas, actually I'll pick my TBR before this. Never mind. But if you do have prompt ideas, still put them in because I can always add more cards. So, book 6, we mostly follow Molly. I think a lot of the books we mostly follow Molly. She and her 2 friends, Laura and Carol, they're all 3 in their 50s, start a bakehouse in Lochmedeg in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and they keep stumbling across these mysteries. This one, they are helping out at a yarn festival at a local sheep farm, and during the festival, a dead body is found, and they end up helping solve this mystery a bit. One thing I appreciated about this one in particular is anytime they came across a clue or something they thought was related to the mystery, they called the cops. Hey, somebody's breaking into this camper. Let's call the cops. You know, not treating the police force like they don't know what they're doing or anything. Actually having a respect for the police force and their jobs and keeping them informed of anything they find. And when they think there's trouble, they call the cops. I really liked it. Nice, cozy, set in September. It's September. I totally plan on picking up the next book for October. And cute little Angus is in the book too. And I also finished Politically Correct Bedtime Stories. This is a reimagining of several childhood classic stories. Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White, Rapunzel. This one I didn't get to last year. I'm going to leave this card out. I gave it 3 stars. Yes, there was wit. Yes, there were some clever twists on the stories and, you know, commentary on our culture. But I still didn't really like them. And the Snow White one in particular was just gross. So if you read it, skip the Snow White one. Unless you really like political commentary, I guess. So, yes, those are the 3 books I have finished. I'll update you on my reading challenges I'm participating in. Shepherd's Lie. I mentioned this in my last clip. I counted as including a baked good, because they bake scones and muffins and cookies and bread. And this also counts as reading a mystery. And for series September, I counted Death in the Air for my mystery, Clock Tower Bound as my contemporary, Shepherd's Lie for middle grade. It's not middle grade, but it is very much in the middle of the series. And that's all of the series books I've read. I have one I'm currently reading and one I plan to read. Actually, I have 2 I'm currently reading. Because I always have an ebook going for when I sit down with my 3-year-old to help her go to sleep. And yeah, I'll be back when I can with an update. Happy reading! My whole family has been sick with a cold, so I'm going to try to film this real quick while they're outside. I finished 3 books. First up, my ebook, Loyally Luke by Pepper Basham. It is the last book in the Skymar trilogy. It's Luke, and he's the brother, and he ends up falling in love with the princess, but he doesn't know she's the princess at first. And I liked the banter with all the text messages with Luke and Izzy and Penelope, and then with Ellie and her friend and her sister, but the book really towed the lines on my comfort level. I tend to be a bit prudish these days, and there was so much kissing and thinking about kissing and thinking about being attracted to the other person, and so I'm glad it's the last in the series. I don't know if I'll pick up another Pepper Basham book. I really liked Authentically Izzy, and I think there was another book she wrote that I liked that didn't have as much kissing, but yeah, this one, lots of kissing. So on my series September bingo card, I counted that as romance because obviously it's a romance. And then I think I did this one. Then I read the next Mrs. Polfax book for me. This one is Mrs. Polfax Pursued. I think this is book 11 in the series. And unlike the rest of the books, Mrs. Polfax doesn't actually travel overseas until very late in the book. And it starts with her finding someone in her junk closet, and she's noticed this weird van going through her neighborhood, which is a small neighborhood, so she recognizes most of the vehicles. But it catches her eye because there's a misspelling. It says Chiggy Scap Metal instead of Scrap Metal, so that catches her eye. And then she finds this person who's been hiding in her house for 2 days, and hijinks ensue. This one I actually counted on the thriller square for series September because lots of action right away. There isn't too much of a setup. And I really liked this one. And you do find out about the carousel and the Ferris wheel because of where they end up. And finally, Roses for Regret. This one is the 3rd book in a series. Reagan doesn't play as much of a part. It focuses more on her friend Day. Everyone calls her Day. And she causes somebody the Senate race. And shortly thereafter, she finds all of her wildlife animals that she's been rehabilitating. All of them have been slaughtered in the barn, and she was drugged. And then all of her rose bushes are poisoned, which she is on the board of an Old Rose Association. And so the book mostly focuses on her and Bram Falco, who was the guy who she cost the senator race, and the other members of the Rose Association board. And this one definitely has Beauty and the Beast vibes, and oh, it's a mystery. And this one really kept me guessing, like, who did it? Is somebody else gonna end up murdered? At some points, they're wondering if there's gonna be a murder-suicide. Yeah, I definitely had book hangover after reading this one. But since I already filled the mystery slot on my book bingo, I put it in horror because there were definitely some weird things going on. And Mrs. Pawlfax I put for thriller because that's kind of as thrillery as it gets. So I just need to read a historical fiction and finish my fantasy, and I'll black out my series September card. And for my fall scavenger hunt, Loyally Luke, I was able to mark off a warm or hot beverage because they talk about coffee a lot. And for Roses for Regret, I was able to check off a cute woodland animal because she rehabilitates birds and bats and possums and a groundhog and puppies. She even has some mice. And yeah, it was a good reading week. And I will definitely have at least one more update. Okay, so I put off filming my last clip because I have 6 books when I finished 2 books on the last day of September. So I was pushing it off so I could get those last books done. So first of all, I finished Chromatic. This is the 3rd book in the Color Theory trilogy, so I can't say too much about it. We do follow Ava, the main character from the previous 2 books, and we get a little bit more Elm in this book, which I liked. And I thought it was a great wrap up to the series. I really enjoyed reading it, and I hope the author comes out with more books soon. And yeah, give the Color Theory Magic series a try. And then I quickly read The Last Gasp by Shatona Havig. This is the 1st book in the Ever After mysteries. These are fairy tale retellings set in the 1920s with mob influences and mysteries, obviously. This one is a Hollywood actor decides to give up acting so he can marry the girl of his dreams, who is a cigarillo girl. She sells cigarettes and candy at the theater, but she doesn't know that he's an actor. She thinks he's just regular old Gary. And then at his last premiere, people start getting shot. And really cool take on the Cinderella story. I don't know if I'll read the other books in the series or if I'll just read Shatona's other one. We'll see. And then we finished a couple of homeschool books. I want to talk about our missionary story for this month was Nate Saint. He is one of the 4 or 5. He's one of the missionaries who died trying to reach out to the Aucas. And my boys and I went into this story knowing that, so hopefully it's not too much of a spoiler. We had read Betty Green, who was a missionary with Missionary Aviation Fellowship, the one that uses airplanes to provide help to missionaries. Nate Saint was also a pilot, and he and his friends were trying to reach this Stone Age tribe, and through deception and miscommunication, they were killed. and it was still a really good story. And a couple of the widows and Nate's sister, Rachel, they end up converting some of the Alkas. And so we're going to read Rachel Saint's story next. And I wanted to talk about this series, Concord Cunningham. This is the 4th book, which the other ones are very episodic. And this one, they follow the Capitol Christmas tree from their town to DC, and they have some mysteries along the way. And Concord always uses his Bible to find a way to solve the mystery. So it's teaching them logic and problem solving and the Bible at the same time. So my kids really enjoy this series. We're on the last book, so they're a little sad. And my ebook I finished was The Chaos Grid by, it's Lindsay Llewellyn. And this book is set about 200 years in the future, and the world tried to fix global warming, and they ended up making it so much worse. It's very hot, and there's terrible storms, and so most people live in these domed cities that are temperature controlled, and then there's biological improvements that people can make. But Juniper, our main character, she is a basic, so she doesn't have any upgrades, and she doesn't want to go to the Plex city, so she ends up running away and joining the shippers. They're the ones who transport food from the farms to the cities so people can eat. I'm gonna say some spoilers, so if you don't want any spoilers, I'll just say I do really recommend this book. I gave it 5 stars. I'm glad she decided to write another one, and I'm gonna put a timestamp for where you should go if you don't want any spoilers. So spoilers! Did anybody else catch the Jonah references? I was at least 3/4 of the way through the book before I finally put the pieces together. I mean, her nickname is Juna, and there's whalers and these big land fish that pop up, and all of this chaos storm of events that keep getting worse. And they throw the storming stones, which is like the casting of the lots, and Juna's stone pops up, and she has all of these signs pointing to her being bad luck, and she had these prophetic dreams basically from God telling her to go to the Plex, and she ignores them and runs away, and then she ends up in the giant landfish for 3 days. So yeah, it was really cool. That actually bumped it up for me a bit, because it started out not knowing anything and kind of just getting information as Juna is making her way with the shippers. Alright, and my last book, I did stay up a little late last night finishing The Hiding Place. This is my 3rd time reading this story, but my first time reading this edition, which has illustrations and photos. Let's see. I know there's one of Betsy and Corey toward the end. There it is. So this one follows, if you're not familiar, this one follows the story of the Ten Boom family. They were part of the underground getting Jews to freedom, and they also hid Jews in their house, and they get arrested. The father dies in prison, and Betsy and Corey are sent to concentration camps. And just seeing how Corey admires her father and her sister and their desire to just reach people for Christ, even their captors, even their guards. They're not just reaching out to their fellow prisoners, but to everyone. And the giving thanks in all circumstances is very famous from this book. Lord, thank you for the fleas, because the fleas ended up keeping the guards away so they could read their Bible and have their worship services every night with their fellow prisoners. So I really like that. And I'll go over really quickly my final reading challenges. So for the fall scavenger hunt, a warm or hot beverage, Loyally Luke with coffee, a cozy piece of fall clothing, Clock Tower Bound had the fall outfit with the fall sweater. Oh, primary fall colors, Chromatic with its color magic had red, yellow, and orange, so I think those are all the fall primary colors. A cute woodland animal, I did Roses for Regret because Day rehabilitates wild animals, so there's all sorts of animals: bats, groundhogs, raccoons, mice, birds, all of those mentioned. A baked good, I did Shepherd's Lie because they're always baking scones, bread, etc. A school item, Death in the Air, had fountain pen, notebook, and probably others. For activities, I've read both historical and fiction, mystery. I got a fall themed bookmark at a library, and I've made cookies and bread from scratch. And then for series September, for mystery, I counted Death in the Air by Agatha Christie, historical fiction, The Last Gasp by Shatona Havig, fantasy, chromatic, contemporary, I did Clock Tower Bound, romance, Loyally Luke, horror, I did Roses for Regret because I bought that book and didn't read it for a couple months. So I was horrified I took so long to get to it, and it was a weird book. Middle grade, I did Shepherd's Lie because it's in the middle of this series. And for thriller, I did Mrs. Polifax because for a Mrs. Polifax book, it's got a lot of tense moments in it. So I did black out my series September card. Yay! And the fall scavenger hunt goes through October and November, and I know some of my October books will count. So let me know what you read in September, what your favorite books were, if there are books you're like, no, don't read this, it's awful, and what you plan on reading in October. So I'll have a video next week. I think I'm going to move to posting on Mondays because I'm a little ahead in my filming. So yeah, enjoy your fall and happy reading.